Good afternoon, guys. We're doing this dedication. I'm just going to share my screen a second for you. We had the unveiling for Sensei Mickey Davidow and today. And as you can see, Mickey was known, obviously, in South Africa and throughout the world for two major reasons. The one is that being one of the leaders in the martial arts world, being 10th Dan, he taught hundreds, if not thousands, of students over the decades. And the other aspect that Sensei Mickey Davidow is known for is that he was involved in assisting those that wanted to get into electronics and the refrigeration business and didn't really have money to learn a trade. So whether it was through martial arts or giving somebody an ability to earn a living, Sensei Mickey Davidow touched the lives of thousands of people. And I just want to wish his son Sawan and the family and all Mickey's friends long life. And pleased we went to the unveiling today in the sense that he deserves commemoration. So before I give the Gemara share, which I'm about to do, Kevin is going to share a quick idea because we don't have too much time before Mincha at Shul. Kevin, would you kindly share?
Sure, and I also went to I did judo with him for about 2-3 years also. So shkach for the dedication.
Sure.
Okay, just one thing. This week's parsha is Parshat Mishpatim, which means the laws that we Jewish people have to follow. And one very interesting thing is, remember, as discussed numerous occasions, the Torah stresses having sensitivity for others, especially the downtrodden. And it says in the commentary here, sensitivity to the helpless and abandoned. It says, just that as there is a lamentable tendency for the powerful, for those who would like to consider themselves powerful, to take advantage of the weak and helpless, it is also common for disadvantaged people to be especially sensitive to perceived insults. Although it is forbidden to abuse anyone, the Torah frames this prohibition specifically with reference to converts, widows, and orphans, because they are the most affected by such mistreatment. Like, let's say a convert doesn't really have any family because they're changing their life, they're changing almost their identity. And one has to be especially sensitive not to remind them of their past and where they came from, and not to demean them, because it's not, Hashem doesn't like it when people do that. And we don't like being abused either. So it's good to keep in mind people like that who don't come from a a strong family background or framework that we may have come from.
Good. So to get into the Gemara, we're on the 116th daf in Bet. So how we ended off last time is the Gemara was discussing a brisa that dealt with the issue of a division of expenses among members of a caravan. So what happened is that there was a caravan traveling in the wilderness, and a troop of bandits came against it to plunder it. But the leader of the band of thieves was persuaded to accept a ransom instead. The one or two of the leaders of the caravan intervened and basically said, we've got a small amount of money to traumatize women and children, not a good idea, take what we have. But in fact, that wasn't the full amount of money they had. So what happens is that basically we have to calculate that one or two people that went out on a limb to try and calm down the thieves or the robbers needn't pay for it out of their own pocket. It has to be shared, the load, of what the ransom was worth. Now, obviously, we're not dealing with a case in the Gemara where everything was stolen, because if everything was stolen, there's nothing to discuss. This one had 1,000 rand, it got stolen. That one had 100 rand, that got stolen. In that case, there's nothing to discuss. So we're saying here is there might have been one or two people forking out the money in the front lines of the negotiation, but they have to be paid back. So how do we calculate it? Do we calculate it by the amount of people in the caravan? And we're not talking one caravan. It could be a family that has 2 or 3 caravans. Does each person pay their share to recuperate what that individual lost in negotiating with the bandit and losing his own money? Or is it calculated on the amount of money each carries? In other words, there's 2 ways to calculate it. He might have given 800 rand, and the 8 members on the caravan within the family, and each one reimburses him the equivalent of 100 rand each, and he ends up paying the 100 rand, so they're all having equal portions. That's one way to calculate it. The way the Gemara suggests to calculate it is to calculate, in fact, who has the money, because the wives and children wouldn't generally have the money. It would be a couple of the male members or leaders of that particular family of the caravan crew, which means they would pay an equal proportion to the particular money they had. They wouldn't pay all their money because, again, they might have had 30,000 rand and only 800 rand was taken from them. But according to what their percentage is of each one, in respect to the total number of people, it's worked out as a percentile. And if their total value was, as I said, 30,000 rand, but this particular person constituted 55% of the total funding within the group, and another individual at 4 or 5%, each one gives their share pro rata according to the percentage. It was what was used to bribe the bandits just to keep the situation calm. So it's distributed and calculated with regards to the money of the members' contribution and what they have, not the amount of members within the caravan or the gypsies. So that's one particular example. What does it have to do with it today? You can think of multiple people in a business venture, and they've got different percentiles, and there's a particular risk that occurs. Each one has to put their percentage in for risk recovery in proportion to, it can be calculated, the number of members or their share allocation. And share allocation is a more fair way, because if somebody's only got 10% of the business and there are three or four individuals, you needn't pay 33 1/3 or 25%. He has to put in what his shares are worth. So that's as far as saving money is concerned. Now, there's a different point put in the brisa, is what happens if you needed a tour guide to guide the caravan through the wilderness? In that case, his fee is paid by the members of the caravan, meaning he didn't only save their money, in which case you work out the financial contribution of each member that is carrying money, not the members that did not carry money. And when you're talking about a travel guide through the wilderness with a caravan, what he's responsible for, according to the majority of opinions, is saving that group's life, because he obviously indicates where it's safe to travel, that they don't get robbed and raped by bandits, killed. They have access to fresh water, they have access to fruit trees, etc. So therefore, it works on how many members there are, because he's not only saving money, he's saving their lives. And therefore, the calculation is different compared to who has money to contribute to the overall payoff. So it's a different calculation based on the fact of whom it's saving. Here it's saving human life. There is a...
Just 1 second, Damon. Are children considered members, or are they part of that calculation, you think?
Are whom considered members? Sorry, mate.
children, people underage?
So absolutely. So what would happen is, I think Gavin's asking a practical question. If they're members including children and they don't have any money, then how does it make any difference? Because what are they going to contribute financially towards the tour guide's fees? So I think what would happen in that particular case is if there were 3 or 4 families going to the Kruger Park and it cost a certain amount for the tour and the tour guide, each family would pay respectively either divided by the number of families or by the number of children they're having, if they're paying on a per person basis at the Kruger, if they were at a chalet, for example, and it was charged per person and not per room. Then obviously each member would pay what the share of it is. You cannot expect a family that only has 2 children to pay the same amount to a person that a couple that has 8 children and they're Haredi compared to a secular couple. So it would have to be fairly distributed, to answer your question. Now, there is a different Gemara opinion based on what Gavin's saying, is that the tour guide in this particular case is saving both money and life. What's he saving? Well, if you get into medical trouble, it's going to cost you a fortune. If you robbed and accosted, it's going to cost you a fortune. And both from a financial standpoint, but there's also risk to life in that he could save you from a medical calamity by not getting lost and making sure you had the right sort of access to caregiving if you landed up needing stitches through slipping off a mountain, if you were hiking or a rock, etc. And there's certainly he would know the way. Then the opinion goes that you distribute a 50-50 split, meaning if the tour guide is charging 20,000 Rand, then 10,000 Rand of it would be divided equally amongst the members of that particular tour. Why? Because those members of that tour would all be benefiting and having their actual lives saved, not their money, by having a safe journey and a well-prepared holiday. The other 50% contribution would come according to members' shares. Why? Because if you were navigated out of a dangerous route and into an area where there was a mediclinic next by, what are you saving there? Not only life, but money. And therefore, the only monetary calculation would be amongst those that have money, because that's what they stand to lose if they were robbed by bandits. So those are the two calculations. It's either one or the other, or both, according to what the custom is, as it said, of donkey drivers. What it meant was donkey drivers is they didn't exactly have electric cars behind caravans, and what they had is they had donkeys pulling the caravans, because we're dealing in an era where they had gypsies. So we're saying in that particular case, they're almost unionized, or there's a standard practice amongst people that travel in caravans to what the local minhag or custom is. So if the custom prevails, that it's based on monetary save, it works on the distribution of basically the bribe to placate the thieves and what the percentile is to the contribution and what money they would have to give. If it's to save life, each member of the caravan party. And if it's a case where it's 50-50, because they're saving life and money, that is a certain custom by certain Bohemian communities, gypsy communities, and donkey drivers and the like. So we're just discussing a standard practice of who would be financially responsible, because you cannot expect one person to pick up the tab for everybody. Now, on that note, I don't see Arthur, but I'm assuming he's with us. Yeah, Kev?
Damon, isn't this still discussing the part where the bandits robbed a caravan of wagons, and then the spoils were retrieved in terms of sharing it amongst then they form a. So they form a company. They form a. They can.
Yeah,
the
excellent.
people.
We're getting to that now. So the
Oh,
first,
is this before that?
just
Okay,
before
wasn't
that. So
sure.
we're getting to the general risk. I really please you prepared well. So we're getting to the general risk in case something goes wrong. Who picks up the tab? Is it shared amongst the amount of people, or against who has the money and their respective shares within the tour or whatever, or caravan gypsy group going? It's not about the equal distribution of money, because they don't have equal shareholding. So, on the note that Kevin's saying, it says the donkey drivers or any sort of unionization, or basically a practice where you've got a guild. Like, for example, what would you say the guild is? You've got a guild at like Houghton Estate, which looks after the common grounds of the golf course, etc. And in that particular case, they're authorized to work on behalf of the members. You can also have a union. You can have a body corporate within a townhouse that looks after expenses. This is a principle of a coalition of different people cooperating, or hopefully so, and sharing risks and benefits. So it says these sort of people are authorized to stipulate amongst themselves that, for example, if you're talking about donkey drivers, that whomever loses their donkey, they will provide another donkey for him. So all we are saying is, if you've got donkey drivers in a caravan and they form some sort of coalition, they agree to replace each other's lost donkey, and the agreement is binding. So in the event that someone loses a donkey, every member of the union must pay towards a new one. And they actually, when it uses this term authorized to stipulate, it means they can't back out. They can enforce the stipulation by extracting money from recalcitrant members, meaning, according to Tosfot, is that sometimes members are, let's use a simpler word, reluctant when it comes down to them coughing up for money, because it's not their donkey that disappeared. And since they're part of the guild, they can be enforced to pay their share. So what's the novelty of this ruling is that the agreement is rendered binding through nothing more than a verbal agreement. And we learn generally in civil law, whether it's Talmudic law or Roman Dutch law in South Africa or American or English law, is that unlike other contracts that are written, it needn't be ratified with a formal act of acquisition, like a Kenyan. Now, that's because the benefit of the various members of the caravan actually receive from each other as a Kenyan anyway. What does it mean? Is that when they pulled their money together in the event of risk aversion, because there weren't insurance companies, and insurance companies you can think of the same way. Each person with their premium purchases the other's commitment that the fund will pay out when disaster strikes. So the act of purchase itself is a Kenyan by mitigating risk. So no further Kenyan is necessary. Okay? Now, that's the one school of thought, that the verbal cooperativeness suffices. Alternatively, there is an opinion that the reason that the agreement is binding with only a verbal commitment is because of a rabbinical enactment, Darabonan. And what that does is it gives members of a guild or a profession the legal status of a city, meaning when the law is passed, every citizen, whether he wants to or not, has to obey the law, or else he'll get arrested, to stop anarchy. So the communal enactments of a city have legal force equivalent to that of a court. And guys, it's therefore binding upon the inhabitants, even without a Kenyan or consent. You want to live in a city and you're going to take the benefits of infrastructure, you need to pay your taxes. So with regard to the communal enactment of the guild, it has a legal force equivalent to the court. So when a group of donkey drivers form a compact or a union, the agreement is binding even without it being on a contractual formal basis, as long as the general terms are put out. So, number one, the agreement has to be, if it's going to be binding, You cannot have some members of the caravan not being a party to it. It's like a union. You're only incumbent to get the benefits of a union, providing you pay the fees for the membership. So if you refuse, you can't be compelled to join an insurance company, and therefore the agreement is not binding. But once the agreement is made, no individual can renege on it, because today what you have with insurance companies is a degree of actuarial sophistication where they work out the probability of a rock hitting somebody on a Tuesday afternoon and killing them. And in those days, it wasn't as sophisticated, nor did you have hundreds of thousands of people to be able to achieve such a goal. Meaning, the more people you have contributing to a fund, the less likely each person is exposing themselves to risk, because the probability can be worked out better. So the agreement is, once they abide by it, in other words, if one of them lost his donkey through negligence, the group do not provide him with another one. But if he lost it through normal circumstances, they provide him with the donkey. Obviously, with regards to negligence, nobody if you have car insurance, if you park your car in the middle of Soweto and leave the keys in, no insurance company is going to cover you. That's a given. So they only provide you with another one, providing there's no negligence, according to the Brisa. And if the one who lost the donkey said, listen, I don't want you to give me a donkey, give me the cash rather to purchase my own donkey, and then I'll guard the other donkeys along with you, they don't listen to him. Because the whole point of giving him a donkey is to ensure that he will help guard the caravan's donkeys, and giving him money could defeat that purpose, because he's going to end up keeping the money without purchasing the donkey. So basically, the one who lost the donkey wants to purchase the replacement donkey on his own. So what he's doing is he's requesting money in the place of a new donkey. The other donkey drivers fear that he's going to take the money, he's going to keep the money, he's not going to buy a donkey. So that's going to defeat the second purpose of the agreement. And that is, if every member of the caravan owns a donkey, they all take turns during the week in doing guard duty over the assets. And therefore, if he doesn't have a relative amount of risk himself, he doesn't have skin in the game, he's not going to look after the other people's donkeys sufficiently, and he has an agreement to accomplish the task, not just the initial financial contribution. So so that's the one way to do it, is that he has to be, it's the equivalent, I suppose, of being in a community and each one purchases a car, and you're living in a place where you don't get a security guard for cheap. You're living overseas. So once a night, while people are coming home from work, to and from work and from gym, one of the community members in the townhouse is just checking everybody in with IDs, etc. And then another night there's a roster, somebody else does it until all the cars are completely in. Okay, so others understand the Brisa to mean that he doesn't want a donkey altogether. Whatever he says, he's going to buy a new one, and they don't have to provide cash, because again, the purpose is that he has to contribute to looking after the donkeys, as well as contributing to mitigating the risk of others. Now, where is Arthur?
Discussion. What's the whole purpose of it? Just you have to contribute if you agree to be part of an association.
I'll tell you how it came up. I'll tell you how it came up. If you had a look, you had this issue with Rav Safra, and how it came up is it said, listen, if you're prepared to risk your lower costing donkey of 100 zuz to save your friend's 200 zuz donkey, okay, and it's going to drown, and the basis of it is that he will pay you to rescue his donkey. Now, if the donkey makes a miraculous survival and doesn't drown, does he have to pay you for your donkey that you risked? And the one opinion says no, because it was on the basis that your donkey would be sacrificed in the saving of his. And in the event that your donkey miraculously survives, why should he have to pay? Because he only paid again if you suffered the loss of your donkey in order to save his more expensive donkey. And the Gemara doesn't agree, because it said, look, at the end of the day, there's a miracle that's occurred. Under normal circumstances, he'd have to pay. If the donkey suddenly floats in water like J.C. Penney apparently did, then it's the guy's game, because those circumstances were so out of whack with a normal set of natural events that it's his gift, and the person still has to pay him for his donkey. That's looking at it through Talmudic eyes. Why? Because Rav Safra, you remember, Kevin, had this. You remember, you have this issue where Rav Safra had an arrangement with other people, other Rabbonim he was sharing the caravan with, and they'd have a lion that basically would protect them against bandits and protect them against wild animals. Every night, they'd offer their donkey to feed this lion in order to get the protection. And also, they didn't want to be eaten by the lion, so they wanted to be safe. On the day that Rav Safra had his donkey in the vicinity of the lion was full that day miraculously. And because he had a track record of his eating donkeys, it wasn't as if it was his normal behavior to refrain from eating donkeys. And therefore, it was a divine miracle that he was able to keep his donkey without the loss. And therefore, he didn't have to put it back in the pool the next night to undergo risk. Somebody else had to use their donkey, and he was off the roster for that particular time period. But he didn't have to put himself at risk until the roster came about again, basically. So the thing of it is, we're saying that was a miracle for Shemaim. Based on the lion's track record, it was generally eating donkeys. So Rav Acha of Difti said to Ravina, listen, if that's such a case, then the donkey wasn't really hefker. So why did he need to suddenly grab it? In other words, if it was a miracle, he didn't let go of getting it in his mind. So either it was hefker because he basically, what do you call it? He basically despaired of getting it back. And therefore, when you despair of getting an article back, anybody can claim it. And in that particular case, he rushed to claim it. So we're saying that that's kind of weird. And the Gemara said, listen, Rav Safra did it only as an added precaution because he didn't want to fight with his fellow Rabbonim. But Rav Safra strictly had no need to acquire it again at all, because he never really made it hefker. He simply gave it to the lion to eat. That lion didn't eat it. He didn't necessarily put it in a situation where it could never have come out. He just thought it was probably impossible. So whichever opinion you go to, it's considered a miracle, and the person doesn't has to compensate you for the loss as if the animal died. That's what we say.
Yeah, thank you. You've clarified that that's the overriding principle.
Yeah. In other words, it's dealing with the issue of deviation for risk. Do you still get paid for risk?
Excuse the pun. Sorry, I said the word overriding, and we're talking about donkeys.
That's cute. Basically, the one other point is that last time we tackled, well, what happens if you don't manage to save your fellow's donkey? Do you still get paid? And the answer is no, you don't, because generally the supposition is that you have to say, I will only risk my less expensive donkey for your more expensive donkey if you reimburse me for the loss of my donkey. If you don't state that, it's not a given at all. The guy only has to pay you for lifeguard duty. So especially when you make that statement, if you save his donkey and you don't manage to save his donkey, well, why should he pay you for your donkey's loss? It's saying, because you never fulfilled the task. And then the Gemara turned around and said, but listen, there was a guy that was sick and he needed cabbages and prunes, etc. And when the delivery guy went there, the guy was either cured before he needed those items, or alternatively, he died. So either way, why should he get paid? And the answer is he wasn't paid to make him recover. He was paid to deliver the goods. Whereas in this particular case, the person was paid to save his donkey. Okay, so it's not exactly the same thing at all.
So
And that's the answer that Rebbe gives to the challenge.
So if the guy tries to save, if he forsakes his own donkey but tries to save the donkey of his fellow, and that and he's not unsuccessful, it's not he doesn't have to what are you saying about compensation? You were saying
compensation he gets is the fee for the lifeguard duty thing, but he doesn't get compensation for the loss of his donkey if he's unsuccessful. No. And on that basis, based on what a bad swimmer I am, I'd probably tell the guy, get your own donkey and save mine. It's not worth the risk.
So that's just the lifeguard is when you say lifeguard duty, that's the guy that forsook or was going to forsake his own donkey to save the donkey. So that's all like for his time. He was going to get paid for the time that he tried to save, like as if it was a job. Is that what you're saying?
No, I think the issue is he was going to be paid for the replacement of his donkey, if he made a statement that were the terms and conditions, and further to which that he successfully saved his fellow Jew's donkey that was worth twice the amount that his was. If he didn't do it, he isn't necessarily to be paid because he didn't fulfill the task. You get what I'm saying?
Okay, so he has to. Okay, that's dependent.
I mean, I suppose if I had a cheap car and Gavin had a very expensive car, and I said to Gavin, listen, I can't save both cars. I'll save your car, but if mine goes through the tank, your car's worth 3 times what mine is. Just pay me back for the car. Otherwise, I won't do it. Gavin will probably say, sure. But if I don't manage to get his car, he's going to say, I don't want to pay you for your car. You didn't rescue mine.
Okay, so it is dependent on a successful outcome.
Yeah.
Just put in Bavli, then you cover it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bli
but you know what you get. But to get involved in these,
I'll save your donkey, etc.
Yeah, Bli means
to get involved,
Gavin.
to get involved in all these situations, Damon.
Bli means Bli never.
Yeah, I know. To get involved in all these situations, it makes things complicated, and it's
yeah. So
look, it's
I think that's what the Gemara is saying. Before you get involved, just make sure